Hi, everybody. My name is Nikhil Bhatia, and I manage the Lifecycle Manager team in engineering. Today, I'm going to demo the capabilities of LCM. I'm really excited to be here. So LCM, when you think about it, think of Yum. Yum to Linux is a tool that manages the lifecycle of packages that are installed on Linux and allows you to do the upgrades and installs of the packages, not only just of those packages, but also of the dependencies that those packages may have. And with a simple command, you can bring your Linux OS up to date. LCM does the exactly same thing for a distributed cluster like AOS or Prism Central. Prism Central, as you know, is our management and control plane, which manages and controls multiple Prism elements. So there's a bunch of management software that runs on Prism Central, whose life cycle is managed by LCM. And on the Prism element, the life cycle of the underlying firmware and the services and software that are running are also managed by LCM. Let's see how. So in Prism Central, you can navigate over to Administration LCM, and LCM page opens up. The LCM best practices page tells you the general prerequisites and the procedures of upgrading software as well as firmware through LCM. It provides you a link to the LCM guide, the LCM dark side guide, FAQs, and troubleshooting guide. If you are a dark side and don't have connectivity to the outside world, no problem. With LCM, you can set up your own personal web server whose steps are present in the LCM dark side guide, which enables you to update your packages on Nutanix AOS and Prism in a regular fashion and a seamless manner. LCM also shows you the inventory of the running software and firmware. Because this is Prism Central, we are only showing you the current versions of the software that is running on Prism Central. On Prism Central, the software that we control, we care about is the control plane software like AOS, Calm, Epsilon, Carbon, which is our managed Kubernetes solution, licensing versions, microservices platform, which is a Kubernetes cluster which we use internally for Nutanix apps, NCC, which is our cluster health check, and objects manager, and the PC itself. We also show you updates to newer version of the software that is available in the portal. Again, if you're a dark site, you can download the newer versions of the software onto the dark side web server, and you'll get the exact same functionality like a connected site. How cool is that? LCM, with LCM, you can select all software in one go. And when you click update, LCM gives you a plan of what will happen in your cluster when you upgrade these softwares to newer versions. I'm not hitting apply 6 updates because it will take some time to update all of these software. Instead, I'll show that if your if your maintenance window doesn't allow or permit to do all the updates, then you can select a single update, and LCM will update that. Note that if you select an update, LCM auto-selects all of its dependencies. So in this case, for going from 291 COM to 3.0.0, you also need to update Epsilon, which is the decision engine in COM. And you also need to update PC in order to update Epsilon. We don't expect our customers to know or learn about those intricate dependencies because we are here to make these dependencies invisible from you. And LCM does exactly that. So with a single click, LCM auto-selects all the dependencies, builds the dependency graph, and sorts that graph and runs the update in the right order. Now, the exact same thing happens on a Prism element. So let's look at a AHV cluster. This AHV Prism element is, you can go to settings, you can click on lifecycle management, and you get the same familiar page of what that you saw on the Prism Central. So it gives you the best practices, how to upgrade software and firmware, and the relevant links. When you go to inventory, it shows you the currently running versions of the clustered software, which includes our hypervisor, which is AHV in this case, AOS, Foundation, licensing, and NCC. Note that these are the software versions that are running on the AOS cluster. Note that it also shows you a per node view of the firmware that is running on the system. So it gives you the relevant details about the firmware per node. So it tells you the model, the current version, and the number of entities. This is, as you can see, an NX system. If you're running a Dell or an HPE or a Lenovo system or a Fujitsu system, doesn't matter. LCM provides you the exact same details. Let's see how. So here I have a Dell AHP cluster, and you can click on LCM over here, same exact page. When you look at the inventory, it shows you the Dell firmware that is running. Dell manages its firmware through PT agent and ISM, and it has a single version for all firmware entities. It bundles those into a single payload, and that's the version that we're showing. If you have a mixed cluster with HPE, DL, and DX, no worries. LCM will show you node level details of each firmware, the firmware entities that are running on each node. Let's get back to our AHP cluster. When you go to updates, you can see software updates or firmware updates. So you can select either all firmware updates on all the hosts, but if your maintenance window doesn't permit, you can select one host, or you can even select one entity, which is BIOS. Note that even if you select one entity, its dependency with other firmware, which is DMCs, are auto-selected. Also note that in order to go to BIOS and DMC firmware, we need to update foundation, which is a software dependency. Again, we hide and abstract these dependencies from our customers, and LCM auto-selects those dependencies. Now, when you click update, we will show you the plan in which we will run these updates. Also note that this is a AHP cluster, and we are seeing that there are 2 VMs that cannot be migrated. So LCM asks for the user's permission to manage these VMs automatically. What this means is that before a node is taken to enter into maintenance mode, these pinned VMs will be powered down, and after the planned outage is done and node exits the maintenance mode, these pinned VMs will be powered on back up as if nothing happened, right? So this hides the abstraction, or this abstracts out such details from the users. Note that we also do this same exact thing for ESXi clusters. Let's see how. Now, on an ESXi cluster, I can go to LCM, I can select firmware, and I can say update. Now, because in ESXi, Nutanix is not managing the actual life cycle of the ESXi hosts and the compute HA, Nutanix makes calls into vCenter APIs. For that, we need your vCenter API credentials, or your vCenter credentials. Once you enter your vCenter credentials, once you enter your vCenter credentials, LCM asks the users that I have found 3 non-migratable VMs on 3 different hosts. And does the customer give LCM the permission to automatically shut down these VMs so that the user doesn't have to do that? This makes the lifecycle management of these nodes seamless, and the customer just with a single click can delegate LCM to do these complicated things for them. Now note that because we have chosen multiple hosts to get upgraded, this can take a long time. However, LCM has got your back in terms of performance. LCM tries to batch as many firmware updates as possible so that the update plan for each node is optimal, so that you don't have to incur any more downtime than necessary. All of this makes the lifecycle management of software and firmware on the Prism element and the software lifecycle management on the Prism Central a breeze. Thank you for your attention.